Yukta Krishna Karma Krit Karmani Akarmaya Pasyat Akarmani Chakarmayaha Sabuddhimana Manusesu Sayukta Krishna Karma Krit Karmani Akarmaya Pasyat Akarmani Chakarmayaha Sabuddhimana Manusesu Sayukta Krishna Karma Krit. Synonyms, word by word, meaning karmani, inaction, akarma, inaction, ya, one who, pasyat, observes, akarmani, inaction, cha, also, karma, fruitive action, ya, one who's, sa, he, buddhiman, is intelligent, manusyesu, in human society, sa, he, yukta, is in the transcendental position, Krishna Karmakrit, although engaged in all activities. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. One who sees inaction, and action in inaction is intelligent among men, and he is in the transcendental position, although engaged in all sort of activities. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. A person acting in Krishna consciousness is naturally free from the bonds of karma. His activities are all performed for Krishna. Therefore, he doesn't enjoy or suffer any of the effects of work. Consequently, he is intelligent in human society, even though he is engaged in all sort of activities for Krishna. Akarma means without reaction to work. The impersonalist ceases fruitive activities out of fear, so that the resultant action may not be a stumbling block on the path of self realization. But the personalist knows rightly his position as the eternal servitor of Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, he engages himself in the activities of Krishna consciousness. Because everything is done for Krishna, he enjoys only transcendental happiness in the discharge of the service. Those who are engaged in this process are known to be without desire for personal gratification, personal sense gratification. The sense of eternal servitorship to Krishna makes one immune to all sort of reactionary elements of work. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namo Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamaiham Dadati Swapadantikam Bandeham Sri Guru Sri Uttapadakamalam Sri Guru Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Lalita Sri Visakha Vitamsha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrisavanu Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchakalpataru कृपासिन्धुभैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमो जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवास आदि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. So thank you so much for joining this wonderful evening sangha where we discuss Bhagavad Gita one verse after other. And what a verse Krishna is explaining here. And if you see, uh, Krishna is saying, Karmani akarmaya pasyat, akarmani cha karmaya. So let's try to understand this. It's a bit of a technical verse, but it's very interesting. And once we have examples, we'll understand this verse more clearly. Krishna is saying, one who sees inaction, and action in inaction is intelligent among men, and he is in a transcendental position, although engaged in all sorts of activities. So, what is inaction in action, and what is action in action? So, that's a very fundamental thing which emanates from this verse. And there are many points Prabhupada has explained in this purport we'll dive deep into. However, let's spend some time as to what Krishna means by one who sees inaction in action, and what he means by action in action. And so what is inaction in action? Inaction in action means freedom from reaction by doing proper Krishna consciousness action. Say, for example, um, you have taken a vow, for example. The vow is to, recite some rounds. But in the vow, there is also some mention that you have to do a couple of hours of service in the temple. So, a few days back, I got a call from a devotee who took the vow, and he said, Prabhuji, I have taken a vow to chant, but also in that vow, it was mentioned that I have to do 2 hours of service every week. And that is a vow he took on the 28th during Gaur Purnima from one of our Bhakti Vrikshas. Then I said, this is the first time I'm hearing somebody in going beyond the numbers of round and sticking to the black and white aspect of what is mentioned in the vow, that he has to spend 2 hours in serving the temple. Then something happened, and he did the Srila Prabhupada's books arrangement, and the pictures came out, and that is inaction in action. If you really have understood that, that is inaction in action. It's so whatever this person did, he didn't do anything for himself. His family was there, the kids were in the temple room. They were they were not very puffed up. They were very humble. This person, you know how big the book table is on the left side, and see single-handedly this person, uh, he did everything by himself. So in this aspect, there is no reaction, and this is inaction in action. So what it means is you end up doing things. It's like, say, for example, you want to do a Tata Memorial Hospital or a Birla Memorial Hospital. At the end of the day, you may earn some pious credits. And all these pious credits, we have to encounter to either enjoy it if it has any positive outcome, or we have to suffer if there is any negative outcome. But this service this person did, he had nothing to do with anything to do with him. It was purely for the Supreme, and there is no reaction at all. There is no reaction. That's why Srila Prabhupada in this purport is using the word immunity, right? Srila Prabhupada here, as you can see, he is referring to immunity. In this age of vaccination, there is no immunity. Even vaccines can get you into trouble. But here, Krishna is saying, through Prabhupada, saying the sense of eternal servitorship to Krishna makes one immune to all sort of reactionary element of work. So this is the topmost vaccine you can think of. All these vaccines you go now, no vaccine is 100% safe. And Corona will get us sometime or other. But the immunity, in terms of what Prabhupada is explaining in the last sentence, Krishna makes one immune to all sort of reactionary element of work is possible. So any medication you take, whether it is Ayurvedic medication or allopathic medication, it has some reaction. It has some reaction. Any work we do, it has some reaction. But when you end up doing akarma, when you end up doing inaction in action, it frees you from any reaction. And let's go ahead and try to discuss the second thing what Krishna is saying here. Krishna is saying action in inaction. What is action in inaction? It is mentioned by our sannyasis that action in action is a sinful reaction which is resulting from improper renunciation or artificial renunciation. Let's try to discuss this by giving an example. So once upon a time, there was a Muni called Sobhari Muni. Sobhari Muni wanted to control his senses. He was a very potent Muni. So he went under the water in Yamuna and he wanted to meditate. So he wanted to meditate, but he was not fully trained. He was not fully renunciated. And that's the reason why you see many sadhus in Kumbh Mela, which is going on, they will be smoking. Why do they do that? Because it is improper renunciation, because it is artificial renunciation. So Sobari Muni is a very, very potent person. So when he went down under the water and he is seeing activities happening around in terms of fishes, he went with the right intent that he is controlling his mind. But when he saw the, the physical relationship between two fishes, he got bewildered. And how much bewilderment he came out, that he immediately came out. Then he got rid of all his Muni clothes. And then he wanted to get married. And he eventually got married to another king's daughters, and he had many progenies by sheer love for the physical relationship. And then finally, after doing all this action and inaction, finally realizing that what he has done in his life, he regretted. And then he made a U-turn and came back to a detached life. So this is action in action. It has sinful reaction, which is resulting from improper renunciation or artificial renunciation. That is the reason why Srila Prabhupada is very particular about our practice. The practice of following the regulative principles, the practice of waking up in the morning and chanting. Because when you end up doing that, there is nothing more pure than this. However, we may be standing in a leg, or however, we may be standing upside down with our head, that is all artificial. And that is exactly where sinful reactions creeps in. And it is purely because of artificial enunciation. And that's the reason why Srila Prabhupada uh, used to be very uh, stringent on these sadhus in Vrindavan who used to have multiple relationships. And that is not something which the Gaudiya Vaishnavas profess. We are very pure in our thought process. And so the intent is to stay in the confines of our lifestyle and still do Krishna consciousness. And that is where you're challenging Maya right then and there. So you're basically taking Maya head on. And so that is where these two things, inaction in action and action in action, is so very important for us as sadhakas to understand. Even if we have not fully mastered the art of chanting, but even if we get up early in the morning and start chanting, it definitely helps us. It definitely, uh, in the minds of Krishna, Krishna realizes that at least this person is taking a step, and he will take 10 steps to get us there. But by improper renunciation, by artificial renunciation, it is not really going to help anybody. So, now that we have explained inaction in action and action in inaction. So what is karma? There are three kinds of karma: karma, bhikarma, karma. Karma is that are performed in terms of one's prescribed duties. So here, when you end up doing the prescribed duties, there are some benefits. So you have to enjoy those benefits to use up your prior credits. And that is where, you build a hospital, you get some benefit, but you have to end up neutralizing that. So akarma is actually a class karma, which means without reaction to work, which is exactly the Prabhuji last Saturday, with no relationship to anything. He went out, cleaned up the books, shelf by spending a couple of hours, just because he has read in the vows that he has to spend 2 hours. And that caught up with him. And that is the beauty of such great devotees. Sometimes La Prabhupada has instructed some of his disciples that you just give water in this plant in Mayapur. And for 40 years, they have been only giving water in those plants. And by just doing that, they have perfected the sense of devotional service. So it doesn't have to be big, small. It's a mindset to come up and understand what the vows are and staying and amplifying the vows by doing whatever little is possible. So akarma means without reaction to work, action that are free, one from the cycle of birth and death, and that is akarma. And by the way, this karma, akarma, and vikarma, it was covered in the past as well. But as this verse is really going deep into this inaction and action, I thought of bringing it so it may be repetition to your ears. And vikarma is those actions that are performed to the misuse of one's freedom and that direct one to the lower life forms are called vikarma. It's a prohibited form of or sinful activities. So these are the three karmas, and of which the A class karma is akarma, inaction in action. Essentially, whatever you end up doing for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, you are immune to it. It is actually better than these Pfizer and Moderna vaccinations, where you are not immune to it. You take this vaccination, you hear some strange stories going on right now. But inaction, akarma, is a true way to immunize ourselves, to pasteurize ourselves, to purify ourselves, to get us out of this shackles of reaction from our life. And that is the only way of doing service. So anytime we end up doing any work, right? So say, for example, Krishna is the seed giving father of everyone. Whenever you end up doing any work, if it is indirectly not giving pleasure to the Supreme, then it is not prescribed in the sense that it is being done with the whimsical nature of ours, the whimsical nature of distributing food. So what happens? Initially, it becomes a very social thing. Initially, it becomes a social cause where you end up distributing food, but eventually it becomes a sense of ego, ahankar, and that is when there are challenges. So, so we have to be slightly cognizant of the fact that what is true devotional service, and that is where akarma is the real deep concept we all should imbibe in whatever we do, whatever little we do, that is enough. We really do not need to do too many big things. It is just that as long as Krishna has understood that we are taking that little step like the squirrel in Ramayana, that is enough actually for us to get into the appraisal of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So akarma, inaction in action, is very important. Little things goes a long way in reposing our faith in devotional service. And and uh, and there is another example about action in action. So as you know, Dhruva Maharaj, you all have heard about it. Dhruva Maharaj's father was Uttanapad. And there is a very strong character. Many devotees may not have learned. There used to be an elder brother of Uttanapad called Priyavrata. And Priyavrata left home and he ended up doing um, austerities at a very early age. And both Uttanapad and Priyavrata, they're son of Swayambhu Manu. So they are very potent family. As you can see, Dhruva Maharaj, his father Uttanapad, his uncle Priyavrata. So today we're focusing on Priyavrata, by the way. So Priyavrata left, Uttanapad became the king, then finally Dhruva Maharaj became the king, and you know that entire lineage. But finally, when they were done and they're looking for somebody to run their kingdom, they were looking for Priyavrata. And Priyavrata at that time was like a mendicant. was in the forest, and he has no interest. And that is when there is this very interesting discussion between Sukadev Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj, that when Brahmaji came to persuade uh, Priyavrat to take up the kingsmanship, initially he disagreed, and finally he agreed, and then he had a lot of progenies from marriages. So the point I'm trying to make here is, uh, depending on the situation, uh, as you can see, King Priyavrat, who eventually went on to become a very strong king, and this all happened after their lower generation, have retired and have moved on, because at the time people used to live long. So Priyavrat epitomized that sense of action in inaction, because at that point in time, he had no interest in running the kingdom. But finally, as the day progressed, as Brahmaji persuaded, as many people persuaded, he changed. And once they changed, they resorted to getting remarried at a very late age, and then having progenies for the situation which was demanding at that point in time. So this is a very dialogue oriented discussion we can go into as to why people behave differently at different times, and why, and that is the reason why this is such a technical verse, and where Krishna is pounding with two powerful um, sentences: inaction in action and action in action. So it may be, it may need more discussion to discuss this. Maybe I'm not able to connect, but based on my limited knowledge, what I have found is, this is a very, uh, this is the main tenet of understanding Karma Yoga. And if we have understood this clearly, then it can go a long way in understanding the bhakti principles of Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy. Because when Arjuna was not interested to fight, um, and Krishna used the same technique of karma, karma, vikarma to convince him that as long as you end up doing the service to me, that is enough. Don't worry about your uncles or your cousin brothers. That's not really going to help you. So that being the main tenet of our understanding, we should dovetail our thought process in every step of the way to see that element of akarma and how we can perform akarma with immunity, with no reaction. So, as you know, we have this sinful desire, because of which we do sinful reaction, because we want to enjoy without Krishna. We want to enjoy in our own way. We really do not want Krishna. Uh, we have read that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, but often an ability to enjoy without Krishna because of our selfish motives, because of our sinful desire, really creeps in all the time. And that is where there is this wonderful sloka from Srimad Bhagavatam. It says, Tadartham kurute karma yad baddho yati samshrutim yo niyati dadat klesham avidya karma bandhanam. That means, for the sake of the body, which is a source of constant trouble to him and which follows him because he is bound by the ties of ignorance and fruitive activities, he performs various actions that cause him to be subject to repeated birth and death. See, we know that because in Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita, it is mentioned. This information is there. But still, we have this element of trying to enjoy without the Supreme. When we try to enjoy without the Supreme, then we get into this cycle of birth and death, because we end up doing a lot of sinful activities, and these activities catch the reaction. And this reactionary tail of sinful activities makes us come back again and again and again. And once we have to immunize ourselves through the Krishna vaccine, through this Akarma Krishna vaccine, then only we can truly unshackle us from the repeated uh, action and reaction. Otherwise, we'll be constantly entangled. So, see, this is where this karma is linked to our sinful action and reactions by the repeated birth and death. That's how they're related. But the only way to sort of unshackle this is through the process of immunization by doing Krishna conscious service, which doesn't have any reaction. And that is exhibited in many different forms. There is, you know, see, just to give a very simple example, Hanumanji, when he went to find Sita, Hanumanji had all the qualities to kill Ravana and bring Sita back. So, but when the devotional service is instructed upon somebody, then the person doesn't behave whimsically. The person who asked for it, he was asked to clean the bookshelf or organize the bookshelf. He was not asked to do so many other things, and he exactly did that. Likewise, Hanumanji, when he went, he did not kill Ravana. He just burnt Lanka so that he can inflict that element of fear. So in devotional service, it is very critical to understand what is expected of us and how we can behave properly so that there is no whimsical aspect to it. And because of this whimsical aspect, there is that element of karma or vikarma, where you have a personal profit in trying to do certain things. Sometimes people will end up doing too many things, but actually it is not desired of him. So when everybody comes up and does things in a very cohesive manner, then the things look very complete. But if somebody does more, somebody does less, it becomes very haphazard. So this karma has a total link with his birth and death, and how by virtue of our various different things, like exactly like how Hanuman did, he followed the basic principle of what was told to him. He was told to find Sita Maya and get back and tell about the whereabouts of Sita Maya. And that is exactly what Hanumanji did. Hanumanji didn't do anything more, anything less. So that is the tenet of devotional service. And that is the reason why Hanumanji will end up doing all the potential menial service which is expected of him, and he will not end up overstepping his line. And that's the reason why, whenever we think about Dasanu, Dasanu Das, we think of Hanumanji. And what a way to celebrate Ram Navami than to glorify Hanumanji by virtue of his actions and how he is a hero in many people's mind in terms of how he has um, regulated himself and how he has exemplified himself, and 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 most of the time he would end up doing the menial service which will help Ramji in the exact way. So he understand the spirit of his master in a very nice way. And there are many devotees, and there are many devotees of Srila Prabhupada. For example, Jayananda Prabhu. Jayananda Prabhu was actually a mechanical engineer. And speaking of Jayananda Prabhu, he is our Mr. Rathyatra, right? And even if he was a mechanical engineer, but in order to end up doing work close to the temple, he did not take up the mechanical engineering job. He ended up being a taxi driver. The question becomes why he did not take a mechanical engineering job, which would have ended up paying more, because he wanted to do everything related to how Prabhupada wanted him to conceive the chariot back in the 60s and 70s, and how. So he was a taxi driver. He used to give all the money to Prabhupada. He used to make, and as he was a mechanical engineer, he used to make such nice chariots for Lord Jagannath. And what a way to dovetail his akarma, his immunity around Srila Prabhupada. And actually, he left his body before Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada has glorified him like anything. Jayananda Prabhu was an amazing devotee to learn a lot when it comes to how not to overdo things and how to do exactly what is needed of a person in devotional service so that we live with immunity. And uh, and anybody who has read Jayananda Prabhu's life would recognize that Jayananda Prabhu, by virtue of his actions, by virtue of his whatever limited actions he did for Srila Prabhupada, he would have gone back to Godhead. And Srila Prabhupada has mentioned it multiple times as to how he has transformed the entire Rath Yatra, and he was referred as Mr. Rath Yatra in ISKCON. So, a lot to talk about, but very powerful verse. In action, in action, action in action. It may need one or two more discussion to really dwell on it more closely. I hope we had the examples to back it up. But if it's not enough, we will try to make up for it by adding some more examples, because this is very critical for our understanding. And with that, I'd like to end here. And thank you from the bottom of my heart for giving me an opportunity to speak and giving me a listen. This such wonderful, powerful verse. I learned a lot and hope uh, you could gain a little bit of what I could share. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Yeah, thank you so much, Hemajaganath Prabhuji, for a wonderful class. Very nicely pointed out the action in inaction and inaction in action. Yes, selfless service. That's what it is. Any service, any activity which is in relationship with the Supreme, that is, in action. So action and inaction, or inaction and action, both leads to the same, to the Supreme. Any service, any actions. It's very nice. Thank you so much for nicely pointing that out. So anybody has anything to add? Any devotees? Any reflections? Roji, could you please? I didn't quite understood the Priyavrata, the story of Priyavrata. So yes, after a long time, Priyavrata Maharaj came back, and so can you explain a little more?
Yes, sir. Thank you for an inquiry through. So Priyabhat, when he left his house, he was not attached to this material benefit, right? He was not attached to this family life. He already left. He was not married, and he left. In the meantime, Uttanapad and Dhruva Maharaj, their times were up, and they were looking to kind of replace them. So at that time, what is expected of a very potent king who is from a very Kshatriya family? So a person who has left thousands of years without the family life, he is very much detached. He is not very interested. So when the time for him to take back the kingshmanship started, a lot of munis and rishis came. Brahmaji came, and there is a very nice dialogue between Brahmaji and Priyabhat Muni. So what I wanted to emphasize here is, when Brahmaji explained with such sweet voice that Priyabhat, you are the elder brother of the throne, even if your lower generations have already taken over, but you need to change yourself. You need to change and do the service to this Swayambhu Manu's um, uh, dynasty by taking up wedding taking of family life. And then from nowhere, Priyavrat, he married, and he had two wives, and he had kids who were very, very popular, I mean, very, very powerful. And so the action in this context, he was not ready for it. But as the situation demanded, with a lot of difficulty, with a lot of conviction, he changed. So that is the action for safeguarding the dynasty. Was that okay, Prabhu?
Yeah, it's okay. That's fine. Yeah. Okay. Anybody has anything to add?
Hare Krishna, Hemajaganath Prabhu. First of all, welcome back. Good to see you back in action.
Thank you.
Prabhu, I'm trying to understand the example of that Prabhu who says 2 hours of temple service to take a vow with chanting. Is this a vow he's taken on his own, or is this something which is now protocol that along with chanting you have to do some service in the temple?
Yes, very nice question. Actually, that Prabhu was there in the beginning of the class, and he felt modest enough. He left, so I didn't really divulge his name. I don't. He's not there any in this. So what happened? The Harikishore Prabhu was managing the Shiksha program, right? So in that Shiksha program, there is this, 2 rounds, 4 rounds, um, 8 rounds, 12 rounds, 16 rounds. So for each of these, when you are probably 8 or something, there is also a point which I read, because I saw that certificate also in that WhatsApp group, or Google Sheets. Semester can correct me. There is actually a mention of doing 2 hours of service for temple if you are like 8 plus or something like that. So to answer your question, it's there. And this year, so he's stuck into it. Actually, he's part of our Bhakti Vriksha. So he's stuck Saturday evening Bhakti Vriksha. So he stuck onto it. And he said, yeah, he called actually me. And he said, the one which I took the vow, it is written I have to do 2 hours. Actually, to tell you the truth, I was also not paying attention. But then I started reading that thing which Harikeshwar Prabhu put. And then um, I realized that that is actually true. So it is there, and I don't know when it came about, but this year definitely that was one of the vows.
The other, I mean, as a follow up to the same point, I can understand that when some level of an authority, either the temple management or your guru or a shiksha guru, asks you to do something and you undertake that and you take it very seriously, just as your diksha vows, correct? So that is understandable. But sometimes, in the spirit of enthusiasm, a devotee may take a self-generated vow, whatever it could be. Like on Ekadashi, I'll do 32 rounds or something. Means it is not coming through from an authority. Then, what is the significance of that vow? Because that vow is also something for Krishna. It is not for, and but that vow, I'm trying to understand the effectiveness of such a vow, because in absence of authority, that empowerment, what they say, empowerment that comes with the instruction of an authority, when it comes from the self. So
Yes.
how serious is it, or how, you know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
How would it be?
I understand your question. But one thing I must add, Prabhu, since you joined long back. I also joined, by Jagannath Mercy long back as well. And some of you may have. See, at that time, there was no IDC. But actually, if you think about how in India these vows are being managed, there is a lot of rush, there is a lot of demand, and in order to structure it, some of these recent IDC courses, ISKCON disciple courses, are held every 6 months in our temple. So there has been some refinement. So I'm sure at the time when we all joined, this exact thing what you mentioned, it was probably not there. I probably didn't see it, as you rightly said, but definitely over the period of time, what is happening is people are taking, diksha and are, not really contributing. So IDC course of late, I was going through some of the content. It definitely bolsters a lot about helping the temple, cleaning the temple, and things like that. So the latest encyclopedia for what to do and what not to do for people taking vows is definitely the IDC manual.
Prabhu, that is what I said is, when a thing comes from an authority, whether it is your guru, shiksha, diksha, or whether it's a temple authority, then it is kind of, if I can use the word bona fide,
Right.
then there is some level of weight behind it. And also, the whenever a guru gives you an instruction or tells you to do something, or an authority, not just guru, there's also that empowerment to do it.
Right.
I'm saying that comparing that with a self-generated vow, sometimes in a spirit of enthusiasm, or okay, Janmashtami is coming up or Ram Navami is coming up, I should be doing something more than over and above what I'm doing, whether it is the 4 regulative principles which is there, or whether it is the chanting, or whether it is whatever it be, over and above that. So the example was, say, for example, in Ekadashi, I'll take a vow on Ram Navami that I'll do 32 rounds on Ekadashi. Now, it's not coming from an authority, but it's coming from myself.
Right.
Now, I was trying to understand that. Um, I don't know if I'll call it impulsive, but for a lack of a better word, let's go with that impulse word. These impulsive things, and then, how long would that last? So, yeah, the IDC course and all that is perfect. And there's no questions about it. So you help in the temple, you help in the temple. Whatever is time, place, circumstances, that thing will evolve. So that was I'm trying to get an understanding of self vows vis-a-vis vows coming from the authority.
Mm-hmm. And let's discuss too. Let me also look for the document which was shared, so that if I can share that, at least it will clarify some of our things about the current vows.
You mean you're looking for the certificate?
Yeah,
Hemajaganath?
do you have that list somewhere? That
Yeah,
vow list?
I do have, yes. I mean, basically, this is a Shiksha program part of that is originally the question raised. There is Gauranga Sadhakas. I mean, Prabhuji was with me on taking the vow on Gaura Purnima. It's called Gauranga Sadhaka. 8 rounds plus if you chant 8 rounds. And yes, it's mentioned that as per the ISKCON standards, the 2 hours of service per week, you should do it. So that way you will become more serious. And this is our ISKCON standard for Shiksha vows, like 4 rounds, then 8 rounds, then there is 16 rounds. Prabhupada Ashraya. So if you are a Prabhupada Ashraya, this is our ISKCON standard, that you should be chanting 16 rounds, and you should engage in like instead of 2 hours, 4 hours weekly in service, either in the temple services, either in book distribution or any other services like that. And following the 4 regulatory principles and all those things. So I was trying to see that the certificate. I don't know what it is.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think we discussed a lot around it, but thank
I
you
think
for
Prabhuji's
that.
point is basically, okay, so if somebody takes the vow he's on, there is nothing wrong in it. I mean, as long as, I mean, there is no what is called obligation in the sense that like taking a vow, it is if he himself taking a vow, that's good. I mean, if it's in the within the limit of or within the our allowed or approved processes. I think in the 17th chapter, we were going through the Bhakti Rusha class. Lord is saying that in the 5th and 6th verses of 17th chapter. The 4th verse of the 17th chapter mentioning that if it is not according to the scriptural injunctions, it's simply a waste of time, and it's actually torturing yourself and torturing the Paramatma. if it is not according to the scriptural injunctions. Like we were giving the example of that one is going to do the upavas for the political mileage or something like that. That's just a nuisance. But if he's taking some vows for the devotional service, that's encouraged. That's good. I mean, there is, even though there is no what is called authenticity, but it is within the scriptural injunctions, like 32 rounds of chanting on Ekadashi. It's well and good. And if I am saying that, okay, I'll take a Nirjala, I mean, if you are able to do it, please go ahead. Actually, that's recommendations. If you are able to do it. If somebody does it, yes, please go ahead and do it. That's kind of like it should be within the scriptural injunctions. That's welcome. That's my suggestion.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, very nice discussion on this taking vows kind of thing. So I was just in the weekend I was just listening to one of the introduction of Amoghila Prabhu, like how he came to Krishna consciousness. So Prabhuji nicely mentioned about like how he came, and later on how in a group like there are 3 devotees maybe together, they kind of take a vow that in a month we have to read 60 hours of Prabhupada books. So like this kind of they take a vow and they try to do it, and so that the other persons in the team, they try to encourage them. So just and that's one way of this thing. And the another one was I was listening when Gaur Gobind Maharaj recently passed during his Bas Puja offering. Loknath Maharaj was glorifying him, that the Maharaj has a vow that after evening he's not going to eat anything. So then when Padayatra was happening, Srila Prabhupada advised Loknath Maharaj that you take Gaur Gobind Maharaj along with you when you do the Padayatra in Odisha. So when they do Padayatra in Odisha, sometimes the bullock cart won't function well, and sometimes they get delayed, and the prasadam cannot get cooked before the evening. So and on top of that, Maharaj has another vow also, that till he is not translating Srila Prabhupada book into Odia for 2 hours, he's not going to eat. So by doing this process, sometimes Gaur Gobind Maharaj used to keep on fasting, like for 36 hours, and sometimes the 2 days, because morning whole day morning he will be just doing the padayatra, then evening start, prasadam is not ready, he cannot eat, and the next day he cannot also eat because then his regular like translation is not done. So like that way he has maintained this vow on his own. So just thinking, as long as this vow is helping us in our Krishna consciousness activities, if we are taking it on our own, so I think that should be okay. But side by side, definitely if the vows generally if it is mentioned already in the scriptures, if it is advised already some senior authority, I think that's a better way to take the vow, instead of we deciding that this is the vow I have to take in a small scale, in a bigger scale. Then if it is already prescribed, I think prescribed, and we just follow it, I think that's a better way to do it. Just wanted to share this.
Yeah, that's right. Anything else? Anybody else?
Sorry, Prabhu, my thing is dropping out. The connection is unstable, so I joined by my phone. Yeah, thank you, everybody. I think that brings some level of clarity about self-vows and authority-related recommendations. Thanks.
Sometimes, in the many times in Mahabharata, Arjuna took a vow, right? Remember? When Abhimanyu is killed, Arjuna took the vow, if I don't kill Jayadratha, I would die or the sunset. And Krishna was chastising. He put me in trouble, Yeah. Arjuna took also another vow when there's the Sandana Gopala, and the Brahmanas, children were, kind of disappearing, and Arjuna took a vow. If I don't bring the child back, children back by this next day, I would enter into the fire. Again, Krishna came and, who asked you to take on this vow? Right?
Yeah.
So yes, I mean, there are vows in it if it is within the scriptural injunctions, and if you are able to follow that, I mean, there is nothing wrong. And if it is for the service of Krishna, for to please the Krishna. I mean, I know that many times senior acharyas, I mean, according to the Ekadashi Vrata, it is mentioned that in a real sense, you should not sleep in Ekadashi.
All night you have to do
All
the
night you have to do the devotional service.
Yeah.
Some are taking that. And it's also mentioned that if it is best Ekadashi if you don't eat anything or drink it, that's nirjala, according to the scripture. But, you know, Srila Prabhupada don't recommend that because of it's very tough to do that. Then, as Radhanath Maharaj, don't feed your ego instead of feed your belly.
Yeah.
That's exactly the fact. Don't feed your ego, but rather than feed your belly. So basically, we should feed to the service to please the Lord. That's ultimate aim for all this vrata, all these kind of vows are meant to please the Supreme Lord.
Yeah. Sad part is, you know what, Prabhu, and we see it in our day-to-day lives. Even after hearing so much and even after agreeing, the part is even, intellectually there is agreement. Intellectually there's agreement, but still the translating whatever is in the mind into action. Like you can see what the temple situation is, and especially with a few devotees out of action, the load is falling on just a few. And I was surprised. One devotee told me that the number of Brahman, it's not that we don't have enough Brahman Dikshas thing. So I think this is a very good thing about the disciple course, where a vow is taken, then that level of seriousness comes in, of being disciplined and serious. So it's very nice to have whatever 2, 4, 8 or whatever hours.
It's all bringing closer to Krishna. That's the main purpose of it. That's it.
Deity worship, Prabhu, we do deity worship to get a personal relation. We can understand, Sachidanand Vigraha. But actually, when you start doing deity worship, that's when you actually feel. And similarly, deity worship in the temple is at a different level altogether. Thank you. Thank you, Hemajaganath Prabhu.
Thank you.
Prem Sarovar Mataji, Simeshwar. Thank you very much, Prabhus.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandat Pranam, all glories to Prabhupada. And I was just listening, and it was a really wonderful lecture. I had, understood about a karma vikarma concept, and also like what you said, that to save the immunity. So, you give the example of the disciple which has lived his life. I don't remember the name you mentioned, Prabhuji, but I understood that what you are saying is that to reserve and put your energy what is needed and required. And I also have a question, like if you take a vow by some chance or by chance, I shouldn't say by chance. Uh, I was listening to a more Prabhuji and said it's nothing, it's by chance. It's always for a reason. What if you couldn't maintain the vow? What happens? Like how you could mend if you were not able to do for a day or something?
Yeah, thank you, Mataji, for this question. Actually, we had asked the same question to our Guru Maharaj. Say, for example, you have taken a vow to do 16, but some reason you couldn't do 16, you did 12. My Guru Maharaj says, try to do 20 next day, so that you compensate for what you missed. So, in a way, the intent is to be always on board with what the vows are. But even if we have missed, there is it's not really life threatening. My Guru Maharaj says, try to compensate the next day or the next day. That's what His Holiness Jayapadaya Goswami Guru Maharaj says. So I thought I'll just add to it.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Yeah, it's very informational, and I love that part when you said, I don't know exact words, but I really liked it, that it actually hit like resonating, and it's kind of making so much sense of it. When you said about some immunity, save your immunity or something, you said reserve the immunity and put your effort into what is needed, what is required. I don't know what you said, but you said very beautifully. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mataji.
Okay, so it's nice. Thank you so much. Nothing else? Otherwise, we would humbly request also devotees who are able to stay. We have every Monday, we have our Sankirtan meeting to discuss about the various plans and weekly basis. And we would humbly request devotees to stay. So let's also thank Hemajaganath Prabhu for a wonderful class. Hari Bol to Prabhuji 3 times. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol.
Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol.
Also, all our dear devotees who are joined today, and thank you for that. And let's pay our obeisances to all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. Vancha kalpatarubhasya. Vidanam pavane. Vaishnava Srimad Bhagavad Bhagavad Gita ki.
Jai. Thank
Gaurav
you,
Prema.
Thank you.
Hari Bol.
Hari Bol. Wonderful.
Thank you, Hemajaganath Prabhu.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hari Bol.
Hare Bol.
Dandavat pranam, all best love. Thank you.
Thank you, Hemajaganath Prabhu. Lovely class.